Hi everyone. Easter is one of my favourite times in the year. I use the word favourite on purpose. Favourite refers to something that's wonderful, something that's special, something that we celebrate, something we look forward to, something we enjoy. And yet Easter recalls the death of Jesus. A horrid thing. He died horribly. He died terribly. And yet he died for an amazing purpose. Why it's my favourite thing is it's in his death that I have hope. It's in his death, his choosing to die for me and for you, that brings me freedom, brings me joy. And in actual fact, it brought Jesus joy too. It says in the Bible that for the joy set before him, Jesus endured the cross, despising its shame. He chose to go to the cross for you and for I, because of the good that would come out of it. It's also my favourite thing because it didn't end in the grave. We know that on the third day, Jesus rose from the dead. And because he rose, he vanquished death. It means that I no longer need to fear death. What else could be my favourite thing? If we really unpack this stuff, there is nothing in life more important than Easter. But what makes a difference for me is that Easter has come into my life. I have connected with Jesus, or rather, it's far more accurate to say Jesus has connected with me through his death and resurrection, and then through the gospel, telling me about that story 2,000 years ago, inviting me to believe. The fact that it's 2,000 years ago doesn't matter, because Jesus rose from the dead eternally. So he is alive today, eternally. And he calls every man, every woman, every boy, every girl to follow him, to make that choice in response to his call to give our lives to him. I remember doing that as a young university student, and it just changed my life. So I've lived on both sides of the fence, so to speak. I don't want to say too much or claim too much about that. Other people have far more dramatic testimonies than I. My wife thinks I have a more dramatic testimony than her. It's all relative, and none of it really matters, excepting for the fact that Jesus has reached into our lives and taken us from where we were and brought us into his kingdom, into his love, into his presence, and into that eternal hope, which tells me that when I die, my life is just beginning. And I really, really believe that. There was a man in the stories of Jesus in the Gospel of John called Nicodemus. He was a man, I believe, who was struggling to believe. He was a man like I was, in different ways, of course, but this idea of grappling with God, is it real? Is he really there? Is Jesus real? Are his claims worthy of our consideration? Is his ultimate claim worthy of our life and dedication to him? Did he really rise again from the dead? Is he really Lord? And did he actually die for our sins? Nicodemus was an interesting man. He was a head of the Pharisees, not a head of, but a leader among the Pharisees. So he was a powerful man in the Jewish nation. Something about Nicodemus attracts me. He sought the truth. He seemed to really want to find out when it was not politically correct to do so. Indeed, it was dangerous to entertain Jesus and Jesus' thoughts. It was very dangerous. So he came and sought Jesus out at night, secretly. I think that he wanted to be sure. He didn't know whether to believe Jesus yet. He didn't know whether this prophet, this travelling itinerant preacher, was what he was claiming. He'd seen the miracles, and he was kind of convinced at this stage that this man must be sent from God. But who was this man? Well, it wasn't good enough for Nicodemus to go along with the party line, which was reject this man. We want to kill this man. We want to get rid of this man. He poses a threat to us and to the establishment. Nicodemus felt there was enough going on in Jesus' life that challenged his thinking, that challenged his understanding about God in the Old Testament. So he goes to meet Jesus to ask him some questions. I personally don't think they were trick questions. I think Nicodemus was really wanting to find out. But Nicodemus struggles with Jesus. Jesus says, you've got to be born again. One must be born again if one is going to enter into the kingdom of heaven. Nicodemus says, how can this be? And Jesus doesn't really answer that question. He goes on to let Nicodemus know there's something far more important going on here. And he hones right back into Nicodemus's deep understanding of the Old Testament by telling an Old Testament story or referring to an Old Testament story. You can find that story in Numbers 21. Jesus says this. He says to Nicodemus, just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, so everyone who believes on him will have eternal life. Now the serpent, referred to by Jesus in this story, refers back to the Old Testament story where snakes were sent among the people of Israel by God because they had deeply and repeatedly offended him. They had rejected him. They had resisted him. If you were bitten by one of these snakes, you would surely die. Moses made a bronze snake. He was instructed to do this by God, lifted that bronze snake up on a pole, and God instructed Moses to tell the people that if they looked upon the bronze snake on the pole, they would be healed. People chose not to. Many or most people chose to and survived. When you were bitten by these snakes, there was poison in your vein. You needed to be healed. And so God provided the healing by having this bronze snake lifted up on a pole. You look at that bronze snake, believing in the command that God had given, the promise that God had given, that if you looked upon the snake, you would be healed from the effects of the snake's poison, the deadly effects of the snake's poison. We have poison in our veins, the poison of sin. Each of us has sinned. We are all sinners, myself included. And Jesus here is letting Nicodemus know such an important thing. And Nicodemus needed this for his own salvation, for his own understanding about God and how he had to be before God, how he had to be in order to achieve eternal life. Jesus was saying to Nicodemus, just as Moses lifted up the snake in the desert, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. Jesus is the Son of Man. So Jesus was saying, I will be lifted up on a pole. Jesus was lifted up at Easter, at that first Easter, on a cross. And just like the people of Israel could look at the snake on the pole and be healed, we look upon Jesus on the cross with eyes of belief, hearts of belief. Jesus emphasises in these two verses the critical area of belief. He wants us to believe. He wanted Nicodemus to believe, and so he was helping Nicodemus. What do you think Nicodemus thought? A couple of years later, however long it was, when suddenly there was Jesus on the cross. Do you think Nicodemus would have remembered what Jesus had said to him when he came to him secretly at night? Yes, he would have remembered. Jesus was trying to help Nicodemus believe. Jesus wants to reach out to you and I to help us to believe. Don't make a mistake about this. The believing part is critical. Believing's not easy. For some people it's easier than for others. If you're struggling with believing, keep at it. Reach out to others. Ask the questions that are bothering you and see if there are answers. Come to Jesus at night secretly, so pray to him. Ask him to show himself to you. And just like with Nicodemus, Jesus is patient. It might take you so much time to get to know him, to understand him. Some might do it faster than others. Jesus persists with you. And just like with Nicodemus, he will leave the door open to future understanding, always trying to draw you lovingly to him. So remember the verse, how it ends. Jesus says, the Son of Man be lifted up, so that everyone who believes in him would have everlasting life. And then that verse 16 concludes with, for God so loved the world. We mustn't finish talking about this without emphasising God's love. God so loved the world that he sent his only Son, that everyone who believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. So at this time, when we're doing online schooling, we're doing e-community, when we're worried about a virus, and let's not be mistaken there, that virus is potentially deadly. Lean into God. Find comfort in God. Please be aware that God's offer to you is his unconditional love. All of this comes from God's love. And just like Nicodemus appears to have found faith through exploring, through not listening to the political position, not just going with the cultural understanding at the time, but deeply considering Jesus, really trying to find out who this man was. Were his claims true? Could we put our faith in this man? I'd like you to join Nicodemus on that journey. Reach out to Christ. Easter is that time of the year where we remember his death and his resurrection, all on our behalf. Glorious, wonderful, and my favourite season. God bless you.